Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4Wheel Parts. Today, I took this opportunity to talk about a topic that I get pretty passionate about, and I've called it Slide It Into My DMs. This is really a do's and don'ts episode about how to use DMs properly in social media. So we're going to dig into that in a little bit because honestly it's just a topic that, I don't know, people get wrong a lot. And I want to talk about that. If this is the first time that you've ever visited this podcast, I'll tell you about why we're here. It's to help riders and racers and drivers in the motorsports industry learn how to market themselves, attract and retain sponsors, and ultimately drive more value for their sponsors. So it's basically a free informational show to give you the tools you need to make better decisions and build a better sponsorship program. And it is powered and brought to you by 4Wheel Parts. So I'll tell you a little bit about 4Wheel Parts. First off, Joey D is over there now. He was formerly in the UTV Underground leadership position, and now he's heading up some marketing operations at 4Wheel Parts, and he's just making a big splash all over the place. If you are falling off-road and you don't know about 4Wheel Parts at this point, something is wrong with you, probably. But, it's been great working with them so far. They've been title sponsored for the show for a little more than a month now, I think. Really good interactions, and they got really good stuff, really good promotions right now, so I want to talk about that. Get dialed for summer. Lots of good deals. $250 off 4 Pro Comp tires. $100 off 4 BF Goodrich tires. You can do buy 3 get 1 free Pro Comp wheels. $500 off certain suspension systems. 10% off Ready Lift. It just keeps going. 10% off Smittybilt. 30% off LRG wheels. And if you add all these stuff to your cart, right? You got the suspension. You got all these tires and stuff. Sometimes you need help with financing, so they do have financing options available. 6 months interest-free financing available. So check all of this stuff out at 4wheelparts.com. You can call 1-800-284-9840 or head over to a special link that I have, which is bit.ly, so bit.ly/2UJBLSL. So that's a great way to head right over to the good content and start buying some stuff. Really good stuff, though, coming up in this show. It's just, this topic I get so passionate about. But if you get passionate about this kind of stuff and you like what we're doing with the show, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review, and then go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't done that already, do it now, because there's no better way to ensure that you're getting all of the episodes automatically downloaded to your phone. You don't have to think about it. It's just there, ready for you to listen to. And then if you don't want to listen to an episode, you can always just delete it, right? I think it's easier that way. Subscribe and then delete an episode. But it's up to you. But that's my recommendation. All right, well, there are a number of other companies that make this show possible. AMSOIL, they provide amazing lubrication products, and they're a company that runs on freedom. You can find out more at amsoil.com/rider. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology, and they are ready to rescue your race. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsport sponsorship and website creation. Bold Racing, they're a family race team and GSP XTV axle specialist. And then Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, including MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, GSP XTV, Diode Dynamics, and High Octane Coffee. All right, now it's time to get into the show, but first, we are going to start with your High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up. This segment features Joey Sylvester of High Octane Coffee, and he gives tidbits of sponsorship advice. You can reach him at Joey Sylvester 8, or you can find out more at High Octane Coffee.
What's up, guys? Joe Sylvester here with your high-octane coffee marketing tune-up of the day. Today, I want to talk about being omnipresent. Omnipresent means being in more than one place. Don't focus on just building your Instagram or just building your YouTube or just building your Facebook or solely relying on just the sponsors or just the stickers on the side of your car and expect that is going to deliver value and return on investment for sponsors. Make yourself present in your local community. Make yourself present at the race car tracks, car shows, even hot rod shows. Offer to bring your race car out, put it on display, shake hands, kiss babies, give out autograph cards. Any kind of charity work with children's hospitals, or maybe more animal hospitals are your thing, animal rescues. Maybe making some appearances at local schools. Little kids love race cars. Use that to your advantage and make a positive impact on your community. Also, trade shows, things like PRI, SEMA, these are all things that are very important for you in building your brand and being, like I said, omnipresent. Make sure that when you're making that phone call or you're sending that email, that sponsor has already met you. That person has already come in contact with you face to face, and you're going to be a step up on the game.
Okay, let's get into this content. I am talking about the do's and don'ts of direct messages on social media. There's songs about this, like it's funny, slide into my DMs, right? It's just an opportunity for great success or utter failure. And I want to talk about that. What kind of sparked this episode is, I guess it was kind of a whim. I got this direct message, and I get a lot of these, even with what I do, and that's part of the problem. But I got this direct message, and I just read it, and I was like, gosh, man, this is just so frustrating. It made assumptions about what my podcast or my Instagram or whatever was about, and it was nowhere near accurate, and that's just way too common. But I'm going to talk about several elements of it, because this specific post, had some issues with it, but there's just many other ones that have tons of issues. But there's also ones that are really good, and I want to talk about those things. So this is just going to be a back and forth of do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. So we'll break that down in this episode. But it is going to be pretty direct, right? I'm going to try to say, this is something very tangible you can do. A lot of times on the show, I spend a decent amount of time focused on, all right, how do people build relationships? How do they get in the right mindset? And I like to break that up sometimes with very tangible recommendations too. So the mindset thing is a little softer. Well, this episode is going to be a little bit more specific. So this is a good one to take notes on. If you're really good at the direct message thing, I would love to hear more about that. Maybe you head over to our Facebook group, which is the Sponsored Rider Club. Go ahead and leave some recommendations for other people to look at. How do you properly write a direct message or properly utilize a direct message on social media? Either way, let's just get right into this thing right now. First, pretty obvious here, but use them. Use DMs. I can't always guarantee that they're going to work, but they're an option, and they can work. At least try it. There's definitely some advice out there that says, steer clear of using DMs for any sort of sponsorship conversation. And I think the reason for that advice is because of how easy it is to misuse the DMs. But it is possible to use them that way. But you kind of got to go through a lot of these other do's and don'ts before you're ready to do it. At least that's my recommendation. So I do think that they are a pretty powerful tool. Instagram, Facebook, people don't use them as much on Twitter, at least in this motorsports community, but it does work. It is a powerful tool. You just have to use it appropriately. So that's why I am going through this whole thing. I want you to use them. I want you to craft a better response, though, when you use them. So step 1, point 1, use them. This is important. First don't that I want to cover. don't rely solely on direct messages. Not every company really tracks DMs, and they might not respond to every message, even if it is a well-crafted one. Even if you put the thought into it, they might not respond to it. So my first do was use them. My second don't here is just don't make sure that's not the only thing that you're using to build relationships in your sponsorship world. There's other things out there. Remember, there's email, there's phone, there's face-to-face interactions at events, there's snail mail still, commenting on their posts. All of these things still exist. They're definitely still good or reliable options. So I want you to use direct messages, but I don't want them to be your only way of reaching out and contacting people. Next do here, check your grammar. Oh my goodness. I get it. Like, we're in a world where everything's lightning fast and there's all these different shortcuts you can take, and I don't know. It's just, it's so frustrating when I get a direct message and the grammar is so bad that I don't even know what it's trying to accomplish anymore. Now, trust me, I've made these mistakes too, and that's even more frustrating when I type something out, especially if I do it on like my phone and I look at the message. Even if I look at it beforehand, I still mess this up, but I look at the message afterwards and I'm like, oh no, autocorrect got me, It was funny. I was actually joking with somebody the other day, which in this case I didn't care about grammar. It doesn't matter. Like, we were just having a friendly conversation. But and if you're listening to this, like, I'm not gonna say your name, but if you're listening, it's so funny. But they were saying like, hey, I'd love to help you out in some way, shape, or form. And but what they actually typed in, hey, I love you, and then how they're gonna help. And it was just funny. I responded back seriously later, but I really in the moment was like, I wanted to say I love you too. But those things in that situation didn't matter. We already had the relationship. But if it was first time that I was reaching out to a sponsor and it said like I love you, like, oh, okay, like I love your product or me as a person, I don't know. This might have just gotten really awkward. But slow down. It's okay to use a complete sentence, and it's okay to have proper spelling when you're doing a direct message. It's very much appreciated if you take that time when you're crafting a DM to somebody. Now, again, if it's your best buddy, I don't know. I don't care at that point. Even if it's a sponsor that you have a really good relationship with, maybe it doesn't matter as much anymore, right? But I'm talking about sliding into someone's DMs. Maybe it's the first contact. Like, just check your grammar, please. An extension of that is my next don't, and it's basically saying don't use shorthand or slang. At least not at first. I hope, again, that you get to this point with a sponsor, but for a first time, I don't know. It's just not the right time for it. There is a time and place for that, for the BTWs, the LOLs, the TTYLs. I don't know if people still use TTYL, which I think means talk to you later. I don't know. I don't use shorthand like hardly at all. It's just, for whatever reason, I'm against it, just in the core of my soul. But I think there's a place for it. Like, you're texting your aunt, right? Let's throw in a TTYL, but not a potential sponsor. It's definitely not in the first time. First interaction. So similar to the grammar piece, like if you have these different little shorthands that maybe they don't understand, it's just going to cause confusion, and it's going to look potentially like you're a little lazy. I know, I get it. It's not really that you're lazy. You're probably just trying to accomplish more in a short amount of time, but it feels like you're trying to be lazy to the person reading it, especially if they don't know you or who you are. So that's another don't, kind of extension of my do, but very important regardless. You're going to hear me probably say very important a lot, because why would I even be doing an episode about these things? Like, why would I even talk about any of these things if it wasn't something I felt was really important for you? And that brings me to my next do. Do your research. Quite honestly, this is probably my biggest complaint that I have, is people reach out without understanding the context of the company. I get this a lot. I really do. And I am not some massive company with some massive following. Like, I do not get the DMs that some of these big companies get. And when I talk to representatives of big companies that, receive sponsorship requests, they receive DMs, this is one of their biggest complaints as well. Fastest way to exonerate yourself from a potential sponsorship opportunity is to not know anything about that company and then ask them for money, like straight up. I had the thing that kind of started this episode, the thing that sparked my desire to produce this episode was someone reached out to me. They asked me for $400, right? Like, wow. Right off the bat, they're asking me how does this work? Can I have $400? Like, what? I mean, I get it. This is called Sponsored Rider Club Podcast. There's a little bit of confusion around what that means. What do we do? Your guide to motorsports sponsorship. What does that mean? Well, apparently it means to this person that I'm ready to give them $400. But I get that a lot, right? I don't do that. There's nothing on my show or nothing on any of my profiles or nothing on my website that indicates that I'm going to give away money for sponsorship. Now, I help connect you with businesses, but there's nothing that says that. And I've used this example before. My company name is actually called Impact Fuel. I've used that for a couple of different projects, but that's the name of my company, Impact Fuel LLC. I don't get them as much anymore, but I used to get a ton of references for free fuel. Like, hey, bro, like, I'd love to run your fuel. Like, I'm super fast, and like, I could totally run your fuel. I'm like, okay, great. I don't have fuel. Like, are you talking about you'll use like my mindset and my motivation to like go faster? Like, I don't produce any oil. I don't produce any gasoline, any diesel. Like, you would know this if you paid attention to anything that I did. So do your research. If for whatever reason you can't figure out exactly what the company offers, use the DM to gather that information. Seek first to understand. It is like relationship 101. Give something first. You can give them the opportunity to explain their company. A lot of these people, especially folks who are answering DMs, like, they've got a lot of passion for their company. They want to talk about their products. They want to talk about the cool things they're doing. Bring that up, right? Don't start with how much money you want them to give you. Don't assume of what they do if you don't understand it, because it's just super awkward. And it is the biggest way to get yourself, blocked. It's never a good way to start that conversation. So do your research and understand a little bit more about the company. I actually talk a little bit more about this in later do's and don'ts, but I just wanted to hammer this one home here before we do our break to thank the sponsors for the show. But do your research, understand as much as possible, and if you don't, the DMs can get you that and also build a relationship. You can ask those questions and get there. There is nothing wrong with that. All right, I am going to get back into more do's and don'ts in a minute, but right now I do want to take a minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast.
Hey guys, George Hamill here to talk about SolderWeld's new off-road repair kit. If you're a racer of any type or an off-road enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to take a close look at this product that bonds metal on the spot. SolderWeld has combined some of their most elite products into one small kit that fits perfectly under your seat or strapped to a roll cage and allows you to make some insane fixes anywhere you go. How many of us have been in a race or out on the trail and got a rock chip in a radiator or brake line? We have seen a top-tier desert race team at the 2019 Mint 400 taken out by a simple rock to the radiator. If they had an off-road repair kit on board, they could have been back up and running in just minutes. The kit includes everything you need to work on dirty aluminum, stainless steel, copper, and many other metals. SolderWeld's cutting-edge technology allows you to make these fixes with extremely low heat and incredibly high tensile strength, leaving you a lasting fix every time. Don't be that guy broke down on the side of the trail. Get your off-road repair kit today, and your friends will thank you.
Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. Family race team. Those are the first words that come to mind when I think of Bold Racing. And the next one is actually axles. Bold Racing is a premier distributor of GSP XTV axles. And if that wasn't cool enough, they just came out with an entirely new axle called the Revolution axle. It is a hollow tube axle. It's really cool. If you head over to their website, gspxtv.com, or you can find out more at boldracingltd.com, you can find out how this new axle technology works. So they are saying to view this as a fuse for your drivetrain. So the hollow tube CV axle twist technology actually increases the strength and reliability of the axle, and it also reduces stress on the drivetrain. Plus, honestly, it's super cool looking, and if people know me, they know that I really like cool looking stuff. So they come in this really cool gold color. Check it out. It's absolutely revolutionary. Let's talk about AMSOIL. Maybe you've seen them at Sturgis or the AMSOIL Championship Snowcross Series, maybe your local track. Maybe you heard about them on this show. They are all over the power sports world, and here is why they get it. They're a bunch of gearheads just like you and I. They're riders, they're racers, just like us. They're also chemists and engineers, which means they're good at making synthetic oil. That's what we want them to be good at. Their time at the track and on the streets, it gives them that first-hand knowledge of how tough equipment is on oil. Extreme heat, increased stress, high RPM riding, it all works against you and your ride to basically get you sidelined. But no worry, AMSOIL handcrafts synthetic lubricants that fight wear and resist extreme heat so that you can get the most power and best performance out of whatever it is that you ride. Visit amsoil.com/rider for more details and check out their full line of products for anything that you ride. Two questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you gotta check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to TopThePodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're in the second part of this do's and don'ts episode about sliding into DMs. What are the good ways of approaching that? What are the bad ways, do's and don'ts? I've got about 4 more to cover here before we close out the show. And I'm going to start with a don't here. And it's an extension of some of the other comments that I've made before, but don't start with what you want. Unless you somehow stumble upon a company that is absolutely desperate to sponsor someone, this tactic is very off-putting. I always think of this like, sponsor me, bro. Like, sponsor me, bro. Please just stop doing this. Tell your friends to stop doing this. Create posts to tell people to stop doing this. I don't know another way of spreading the message. You got to pay attention to how human relationships work when you're utilizing DMs. Start with what they might want. They probably want more attention. They probably want to market their product. Please start by asking more questions around those things and not with what you want. It goes back to doing your research. It goes back to how you initiate that conversation. It's just, I don't know, think of this. Think of walking down the street. Someone pulls you aside and says, hey, sponsor me, bro. Like, I want $400 to do something. Right? Oh, wow, that's amazing. And it's creepy that you're talking to me right now about this. I don't know who you are. It's the same thing in a DM. Now it's electronic version, a little bit less risky, feels maybe a little bit safer, but you know what? It has the same effect. So you should not start with what you want. Start with what they might want, or start talking about them, which is actually a lead-in to my next do. Start building the relationship. DMs are a great starting point. You can use open-ended questions. You can make introductions. You can make inquiries. And you can spread the conversation out over multiple days, multiple hours, multiple weeks. I don't know. You can spread that out. It does not have to happen right away. Some relationships, from a sponsorship standpoint, start a year in advance. And they can start through a DM, right? Going back to my very first do utilize this platform. It can give you access to people, but the way you do it should be focused around starting a relationship. I'm just going to cover a few examples of how you might start this DM. Hey there, my name is Joe Bob Ryder. I love backcountry snowmobiling and endurocross. It looks like your brand focuses on gear for these disciplines and produces great promotional content. Okay, me as a company representative reading that, okay, I might want to, oh, that's cool. Oh, maybe I'll just like it. Maybe I'll put a little heart. I don't know, something, right? It's a good starting point that's not about you and what you want. It's just, here's who I am. Welcome to this conversation, right? Let's keep things going. And I think that's a great little intro, and I think that's a great way of starting things. Especially if you use, say, on Instagram, like some handle or it's not clear who you are. So a lot of times with my podcast, and if I'm using a DM, I'll introduce myself first. Hey, my name is Josh Weesey. I host the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Because otherwise, they might not know who exactly I am. Maybe I have a representative that does my DMs for me. They don't know that, right? They could be talking to Tim Bob Smith, who represents Josh Weesey, right? They don't know that unless I tell them. And I think that helps break the tension a little bit. Who am I exactly talking to? But you can follow that up. What's your favorite product? Like, you can ask them, hey, you've got 10 products. What's your favorite? Which one do you like to promote? You could have a simple thing. Hey, I love your last post. Great picture, right? Some of these people, they may be the ones who are actually taking the photographs or the videos or whatever and putting it up. Hey, I love this. This is really good stuff. You could say that. Nothing wrong with that. I highly encourage it. Maybe they were at an event and you saw some picture and you're like, oh, I was at that event as well. What was your favorite part? I really enjoyed such and such. These are all different ways of getting a conversation going. Maybe as this goes on and you have a couple of these comments, you start saying things like, oh, what are you focusing on right now? What are you trying to promote? What products are you trying to sell right now? What season are you in? You can ask those questions. And that might now extend into, do you have a sponsorship program? Do you have an influencer program? You can't just assume that all companies do this. Some companies don't. At an event I was just at this past weekend, the Silver Lake Sand Dunes Jeep Invasion, I talked with a number of companies there, and I asked a few of them, because that's one of the ways that I get guests on the show, right? I'll ask people, do you have a sponsorship program? And some companies don't, right? They just don't do it. They don't need to, or they don't see the value in it. So you can't just make that assumption, but this is a good way to find out. Do you have one? Well, if so, I'd love to learn more about it. Based on our conversations that we've been having, maybe it's over the past hour or the past week, I think that I can positively represent your brand and position you to sell more product in your target market, right? These are just, like, imagine that conversation playing out and compare it to, sponsor me, bro. Like, I joke when I say that, but it's not far off of a lot of the DMs that I see. Sponsor me, bro. Like, let's get sponsorship rolling. Like, I'm super fast, bro. Sorry I keep using that voice. I don't know. That's just what comes to my mind whenever I read these messages. But either way, the focus here is on what to do, which is start building the relationship. All right. This is the last don't I'm going to cover. Don't start a sponsorship conversation with a company you haven't already been following. Now, if they reach out to you, that's a different thing. If you slide into a DM and start entering into a sponsorship conversation and don't really understand the company and they take hold, like they for some reason actually buy into this, you may have accidentally put yourself into a situation where you find you don't align with the brand and now you've got to back out awkwardly. Okay, so you enter into a conversation and you're saying like, hey, do you have a sponsorship program? Yes, I do. Oh, I'd like to talk more about that. And they're like, oh, great. Yeah, we're looking for somebody just like you. Would you like to market our product? I could send you some stuff right away. All I need you to do is, sign this contract. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then you find out a little bit more about what's in the contract, or maybe more about what the product is, and you're like, ooh, I don't know about this. Maybe they compete with one of your other sponsors, which is awkward, especially if your sponsor finds out that you're now at the stage of signing a contract, right? Maybe they have some brand values that are completely outside of, what you represent. I don't know. There's a lot of weird things that can come from this, and it can get super awkward. I definitely hear about these stories. Yeah. Don't start a sponsorship conversation with a company that you haven't already been following. You should be following them. You should know a little bit about them, what they're trying to represent. If you get into this awkward situation, my recommendation would be to say, hey, let me hold tight and just figure out a little bit more about your brand. I just like to do a little research and study. I want to make sure that, I'm the right person to properly represent your brand. Companies will actually really like that response. It's okay to say that. Give me some time to look at this. I really want to make sure that I'm putting the right focus on your brand, right? I don't want to misrepresent your brand. So I just want to, before I commit, I want to dig into these things. But I just think that's a good start. I think also if you do start a sponsorship conversation with a company that you have been following, you already know more about what questions to ask them. And maybe, if you've been engaging with their content, they already know you. They may already have a little bit of an understanding of what you do and what you bring. So it's just a thing I wanted to comment on because I do think it's important. All right, my last do, and this is actually going to kind of close out the show for us here. Do provide context to your message. Now, this applies across the board, not just sponsorship DMs. If I can't understand what you're asking or what you want, I'm going to become annoyed very quickly. I can't tell you how many times that I get DMs and I have to respond with, I apologize, but I'm unclear of what you're asking of me. It's, I get this in all sorts of different mediums too. Like it could be an email, it could be maybe on a voicemail, but definitely on the DMs I see this where someone will make a comment, and it's not always about sponsorship, right? They'll make a comment maybe about the show, and I'm like, I don't know what you're asking me. I would love to help, but I don't understand what you're seeking. I've even seen them in these like long drawn out messages. That actually probably should be a don't in itself. Like if you're doing a DM, it's so hard to read long messages. Break those things up. Ask for an email address first and then write a long message. That should have been its own separate conversation. But like, I get these big long messages and I read through it, and at the end I'm like, what did you want? Why are you messaging me? What's the purpose of your message? What's the context of your message? I just don't understand. And now I have spent 5 minutes, 10 minutes trying to understand, and now I'm asking you to explain it. I'm just annoyed at this point. And this is definitely feedback I've gotten about, people reaching out to brands and just not giving them enough information for them to really understand why they're reaching out. Most brands, most companies, if they have a direct message that's really long, or that one that they don't understand, they're not going to respond. They're just they'll look at it briefly, decide within the first couple of seconds that it's not worth their time, and move on. So you can avoid that by providing the context to your message. Why are you reaching out? Hey, I'm reaching out because I love your brand. I'd love to learn more. I'd love to represent your brand. But just get that context out there. Okay, well, I really appreciate you tuning in to this episode. This is a passion topic for me. I believe that social media is a really powerful tool, but there's just elements of it that you need to think about and utilize properly. So that's it. I'm going to close things out. Have fun and ride safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. Follow us on social media as well. That's where we share a lot of information and upcoming guests for the show. Pay specific attention to our Facebook page. That's where we do our live shows 2 each month. To get some insider access and upcoming guests, you can also check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. That also offers a forum for best practices sharing, so you can ask questions and get answers from the motorsports community. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, 4-Wheel Parts, AMSOIL, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, GSP XTV, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, Diode Dynamics, and High Octane Coffee. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.